Hey there, and welcome to the White Canvas podcast, where today we're going to be learning about the technology stack that's required for building a website. Now, most of you probably heard terms of front-end, back-end, web server, and probably other terms in addition to that. But today we're going to have Nicholas Pisani walk us through the process that we have at White Canvas for building websites, and we're going to be specifically talking about the technology stack. So thank you for tuning in, and let's get started. Hey Nicholas, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey Vasile, doing great. Happy to be here recording another episode of the podcast. So excited about it.
Awesome, sounds great. So for today's podcast, we're going to be talking about the technology stack that's required for building a website. But before we jump right into this technology stack, how would you describe what a website is?
So basically a website is a piece of software that runs on a computer that it's connected 24/7 to the internet, and other users can access that piece of software by going to a specific URL and interacting with that piece of software. So for instance, when you type google.com, you'll be connecting yourself to a computer somewhere else, probably in United States or a data center somewhere near your location, and where you can interact with this piece of software, see data, input data, and retrieve other information. So basically that is what it is. It's like software that is connected 24/7 to the internet and where that you or other users can interact with.
So how would you categorize the different parts of a website? Like, most of us are familiar with terminology such as the front end, the back end, the database, but how would you describe these to an average person?
Okay, cool. So, well, first of all, as you mentioned, you have the front end. The front end, it's everything that you see on a website. Basically, it's what you are seeing, all the stuff that you see on your browser. And that piece of software or everything on the front end, it's rendering and it's execute on your browser. So it's on your local machine on your browser. So that's the front end. Then you have the backend, that it's the piece of software and the program that renders and gets executed on the server. So that's server-side rendering. So whenever you ask for something, it's gonna execute a function and do something, and all that stuff happens on the server. And then you have the database, that basically it's where all the information gets stored. So whenever you are logging in or retrieving information about a user or something else, the backend, it's gonna get that data from the database and retrieve it to the front end, and the front end is gonna show that information to the user.
Okay, cool. Thank you for summarizing that. So if we can just expand a little bit further into like the front end, can you walk me through like what it really entails? Like the types of languages and basically how they work together to create the front end.
Yeah, for sure. So the most basic type of front end that you can have, it's HTML and CSS. Probably you're familiar or you've heard some of these terms, but HTML, it's the structure of the website. So basically it's where you define what is a title, what is a paragraph, what is an image and stuff. So they're kind of different tags that says this piece of content here is a title, this piece of content here is a paragraph. So that's HTML. If you just have the HTML, it's gonna look awful. I mean, it's just text without any styles. So there's where CSS come to play. CSS stands for Cascade Style Sheets, and it's what you use to add styles to all the HTML. So basically you can say these titles should be this big, should use this font, the background should be this color, and you move the content or the pieces around the page to make it look good. So that's with that you can have like a static site and a static front end site. What most of the sites have nowadays is another language that's called JavaScript. That what it allows you to do is, as I mentioned, it's like execute certain functions on the browser. So basically you can click a button, and when you click a button, you can have a pop-up or maybe a cool animation, or even connecting to the backend to get some data from the database or something like that. So everything it's done, all that stuff, it's done by JavaScript. And right now, there are a lot of different JavaScript libraries and frameworks that you probably heard of that are React.js, Angular, and Vue.js. So all these libraries and frameworks are based on JavaScript and makes the life of the developers easier while creating front-end applications and front-end websites.
Okay, cool. And who are these frameworks maintained by?
So, Angular and React are maintained by big companies, which is Facebook for React and Meta company. They changed their name recently, but Meta or Facebook maintains React, and Angular it's maintained by Google. And then Vue.js, it's I think it's open source, or I'm not sure who maintains Vue, but it's not a super corporation behind it.
Okay, cool. So we spoke about the front end. The back end, you just mentioned that it's JavaScript and basically allows the functionalities for the website. Is my understanding correct?
That's the front end. The back end, it's a program that runs on the server. That it could be also JavaScript. So right now it's pretty trendy Node.js. That it's like a backend programming language that generates or runs some tasks on the server. And then you have other languages like PHP, C#, Python, Ruby, those are different backend programming languages. The important thing to understand here is like the main difference is that the backend runs on the server and the frontend runs on the client or on the browser. So that's the biggest difference between the two things.
That's an excellent summary. I like that. So the front end runs on the client, right? So like on the browser, but then the back end runs on the server side, and then collectively they make up the website.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. I like that summary. So let's talk about it further, and then I guess the third part that you mentioned earlier in the summary is the database. And can you just like summarize how the database works and sort of what's the purpose of a database?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, a database, it's where you store all the information of an application. So just to make an analogy, you can think about the database as a huge spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet, you can save or store different type of data, like users. So you can have a table where you have all the users, and then when someone wants to log in, you'll like they'll go to the front end, input the username and password. The front end will communicate to the backend. The backend it's gonna say, hey, I don't know, Basile, do I have this user on the database? We'll go ahead and search for it, and if it does have that user, it's gonna retrieve it, and if the password match the password and that you enter, then it's gonna say that's okay, he can log in. If it doesn't match, then you'll not let you to log into the application. And that's basic scenario for users, but you can store almost anything. Like if you create a blog post, all the different posts or the blogs there, articles, I don't know, like if you create a marketplace, all the different products and everything that you can think of, it's going to be stored on the database.
Cool, awesome. And suppose that a data scientist wants to go ahead and look at the database. What is the language that they can use to interact with the database and sort of work with the data to get some market insight? Okay,
well, so I'm not a data scientist, so like just some quick or the most common databases that are there on the web design industry or web development industry are MySQL, the Postgres, SQL, and MongoDB. But then there are a lot of different databases, some Oracle databases, Microsoft databases that are huge, and then you have crazy stuff to store crazy amount of information. But the ones that are widely used are MySQL. Probably that's the most common one for the general web design and development nowadays.
And what's a place where you can basically like store your website? So I think one of them is local, but the other one is remote. Can you expand on this a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, a website is a piece of software that lives on a computer. You can probably create your local environment and get your computer turned on 24/7 and make it and connect to the internet, and then let everyone connect to your computer and retrieve your website. But that's not practical at all, and it's kind of painful to maintain. So you have a lot of different services that sell you these computers, and they are the ones in charge, and they maintain these computers. So you have different services like AWS, DigitalOcean, and then more specific type of hosting companies like WP Engine, Flywheel, that they have this service that you are mentioned that's called Local by Flywheel, that allows you to create a local environment to work with WordPress. We can expand on that later. And Pantheon and different hosting options. Well, HostGator, Bluehost, GoDaddy, and the list goes on and on.
Cool. And we're not going to get into a discussion of like which one is better than the other, because that's more like, specific to the project.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, depending on what type of application you are going to be running, you probably want to go with one or the other, and budget for sure as well.
Excellent. Can we talk a little bit about like sort of how the front end is developed? I know we have a podcast that's specifically designed to how to create a website theme, but can we briefly touch how what kind of tools are used to basically create like the front end? We mentioned the languages, but is there anything else you would like to add? Yeah,
so I mean, the tools I can use, that's what it's called IDEs, that are the editor. Think about as a Word document or a Word preprocessor, but it's meant for writing code. So there are a lot of IDEs there: Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, then there's PHP Storm. There are a lot of different tools out there where you can go ahead and start coding, and depending on what programming language you are coding on and what you are creating, you can use one or the other. Probably if you have some developer friend, you've seen this black screen with text and lines of text of different colors. That's what the tool that they use to create a website.
Sounds great. I think we covered everything from like what the technology stack is, to what a website is, to the different parts of the website, to how to test and build a website. So we have a lot of content in this podcast. So thank you very much, Nicholas, for taking the time to really share what a website is and so many other things in addition to that. Is there anything that maybe I missed that you would like to add in addition to that?
I don't think so. I think as I mentioned, we briefly cover everything. For sure, we can talk hours and days on each of the topics, but I think this is like a good summary about what a website is, and hopefully after this podcast, you and the audience understand a bit better what is a website and what it works and what are the different types of programming languages.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us and walk us through the process at White Canvas. We thank you, everyone that's been able to tune in to the White Canvas podcast, and we wish everyone a wonderful day. Thank you.